Hello and welcome to BusyWorksBeats.com. Today we continue the trap series right here at BusyWorksBeats.com/trap. Today we're going to focus on hi-hats specifically. So as I mentioned in part one, trap is all about the rhythm. That's what creates that trap sound. It's the rhythms in trap. That's what identifies something as trap. It's the drum sound selection and the rhythms. So today we're going to focus on the hi-hats and how to maximize your hi-hat rolls and different things. So let's get into hi-hats, all about hi-hats today. So what we'll do is we'll create two different patterns so that we don't have the same thing repeating. So we'll go to our playlist here and I'll show you quick little shortcuts in FL if you're in FL with me. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll hit Shift left click and duplicate this pattern. You can also hit Control B, but I don't want to teach you patterns that you may use later and do it wrong. So hit Shift left click and drag over. Or you can hit Control B, but that latch pastes, okay, which is different than regular copy paste. Anyway, what we're going to do now is make this unique. Double click to go inside, and let's make something different about this pattern. Let's just add maybe an 808 in here. Change up the rhythm at the end. Okay, so that's how we'll do it. So now we have two different distinct sections of the drum. Remember, in part one, we went over how 4 bars in trap music, especially when you're in these high BPMs, is really only 2 bars. So that's a 2-bar drum loop. And we'll keep it there. So I like to separate everything. I like to separate my hi-hats because when it comes to arrangement time, you can do a lot of cool things if you start separating sounds. So most people will like build everything in one pattern and then copy it and change something. The problem with that is when it comes to arrangement, it's very hard to make simple changes on the playlist screen. So it's a better habit to separate things into different patterns. So that's step one, separate your hi-hats if you can. Next up is what I'd like to do here is make a long enough pattern. So I'll left click somewhere over here. This is just the way FL is at this point. We're in FL Studio 20. Then we right click and fill each 2 steps for the hi-hat. Now you can see here visually, I could see what just happened. I'm missing one half of a bar, so we need to add this in. So sometimes you'll be great at this, sometimes you won't. But even at my level, I still gotta A/B it back and forth. So now that we have enough hi-hats to go around, you just right click, fill each 2 steps. This is gonna give you the most basic hi-hat rhythm. Now we'll get into hi-hat rolls. We'll get into all those like type of hi-hats. We'll do all this stuff today. Most of that stuff comes from FL, by the way. So here's what a regular hi-hat pattern sounds like. Okay, so the next level, this is the Lil Uzi Vert style, and I'll clone this so we can have all the different versions. So here's the Lil Uzi Vert style, which is we're not going to create hi-hat rolls that are super glitchy, like we're not going to do the glitch hi-hat rolls. We're just going to go which you can play by hand like that. It's not like a glitch like okay, so we're just going to left click and fill in these gaps. So I've seen that more so in the Lil Uzi Vert type of sound, where the hi-hat rolls are there, but they're not glitchy rolls. So that's a very easy way to just draw in your rolls. So it counts as a roll per se. Now we're going to make this, actually we're going to switch this to pattern, 4. And on this second section here, we're going to do glitch rolls. Okay, so glitch rolls you cannot draw in your sequencer unless you're at a really high BPM. You can't draw them in. So what we're going to do here is right click, go to piano roll. And let's say I want a hi-hat roll right at the end. I wanted to go okay, so what we want to do is just drag this note out for however long we want the roll to be. So in this case, I'm going to drag it all the way out. Now you can see it overlaps a note. It's just best you get rid of the notes that are there. You don't want stuff to overlap. Now at the end, it looks like it's overlapping, but it's really not. That's just the way FL is mapped out. So we're going to grab that, hit Control, highlight the note, hit Alt-A, and then change your time multiplier. So we're changing the range to 1 and change your time multiplier. And this determines the speed of the hi-hat roll. Now that's very glitchy. I would recommend the glitch to be just here at this level. Anything sharper than this sounds very glitchy. Like that's not cool sounding. Even that one sounds kind of like amateur. So this is probably the furthest I would go if I were you. Okay, I wouldn't go deeper than that. unless you know what you're doing. Okay, so now we're gonna add another one right here. So we're just gonna drag that note out, left click and drag, highlight the note, hit Control, hit Alt A, and it should have the same settings. Just hit accept. Okay, so now we have pretty cool hi-hat spots. Now the next thing I'll show you is how to make these hi-hat rolls more animated. This is the internet money sound. Okay, so we're gonna go to the bottom here. If you don't see this little ellipses, you wanna open up your piano roll. You'll see a little ellipses, a little dot, dot, dot at the bottom. If you don't see this, sometimes you have to double click your window to see this. So it puts it all in one screen. So at the bottom here, we see a control section. So what we can do is add characteristics to each of these notes. So let's go to the control section. Let's go down to where it says filter cutoff frequency. And this adds what's called a low pass filter to our hi-hat notes. And in short, we're just gonna right click and go downward. Now it's gonna muffle the hi-hat. So it's gonna sound like and it's gonna muffle the notes. And you're like, why would you ever muffle your hi-hats? But the key is that you have to combine the filter cutoff with what's called resonance. So now we're going to go to control. So when we go down with the filter cutoff, we're going to go up with the resonance. So it's opposite. Or you could just have it a steady value. So to create steady values in FL, you hit Shift. Now, one caveat you have to remember here in FL, whatever you do to one note, it saves that. So if I left click this and I make another note, it saves those same characteristics. Now, the problem with that is you may change some of these parameters and forget you changed them. And you're wondering why all your hi-hats are panned to the left, or why they're all muffled, or why they all sound really sharp. It's because it has some of these characteristics on it. So be really careful, when you click around. If you want to reset, you just click on a note that's not affected. And then when you add the note in, it's normal. If you ever mess up and want to reset everything, just hit Alt, left click, and just left click and drag it back to normal. So Alt, left click is your kind of safeguard against all this other nuance if you ever mess up. So you would go to each one of these tabs and just hit Alt, left click, and make it all even. And then you would have to click on the note that doesn't have any changes to it. And now all your notes will have normal stuff. So just a caveat for those who don't know about that. Okay, so now we're going to go. Now this is a little sharp. I'm going to show you another feature. Okay, so that's how you get that lasery sound. Now it goes deeper. So now we're going to a sample level outside of just MIDI. And what we want to do in FL Studio is go to the envelope tab, go to your Mod X tab, okay? And then turn on the amount, mess with these envelopes, and pull down your decay. So this is going to tell it to create a high. You don't need to know what it's doing. What it's doing, though, is creating a low pass filter that changes over time. And so we need to set the minimum value under the Mod X. So as I pull this decay in, the hi-hat becomes shorter because it's muffling the sound. Now the key to this is turning up what's called Mod Y. Now Mod Y stands for the resonance. And now you can hear it's more of a lasery sound as opposed to like a regular hi-hat. So that's another key part of the sound. Okay, so in this case, you wouldn't really need all those automated controls because the actual sound itself has it in there. So there's two different ways to achieve this sound. But I wanted to show you that because that's how you get that sound that you're talking about, that lasery type of part of the 808. Let me change up some of the envelopes so it doesn't sound too muffled and too sharp. Okay, you could do more to the envelopes. I don't want to like bore you to death with all the little nuances, but you could make the hi-hats even shorter with this volume envelope. So it cuts off the tails. Now, in this case, what you would do, since it already has that lasery sound, you would do things like maybe right click and create a fade for the velocity this time. Velocity is analogous to volume. And that's how you get that lasery sound. So it's just messing with the resonance and the cutoff. Okay, so sometimes it's part of the sample itself, sometimes it's drawn into the hi-hat rhythms. Now the hi-hat is super loud in this case. We don't want everything to be loud. That's another thing about beat making. You don't want everything to be loud. Now lastly about the hi-hats, I don't really like that lasery sound. It just kind of I just don't like it. So I'm going to take that off. But I wanted to show you what that meant and how to get that sound. Now let's focus in on the last aspect here, which is going to be understanding the hi-hat is a multifunctional sound. So most people just create hi-hats at whatever note and they call it a day. Now for me, I'm looking at the hi-hat. You can pitch it down and treat the down-pitched hi-hats almost like a different percussion element. Now I like to keep my snap to grid, I meant to mention this, on 1/2 beat. It's just easier for me to look at the screen. I had it on 1/4 beat for a different reason, but 1/2 beat suits me for the most case. So again, we have almost two percussions, and we can make this roll as well. So we can highlight this, hit Alt A, and we can even change the time so it's a different timing of a glitch or hi-hat roll. And now we're stacking them both up. So now it's two instruments. Now the key here, some people do, is they'll highlight all these notes, hit Control to highlight, and you can hit Shift, left click, and drag this. And what this does is it creates a linear volume so that they will never go above the other hi-hat. And that way they're more tucked in the background. Okay, now you add your little touches to it. So sometimes you need multiple things going on with your hi-hat roll. You just need a lot of stuff going on. Now you could do a bunch of things. You could pitch it up. I mean, you can get weird with your hi-hats. You can even add a slide note in FL Studio. This is for more experimental stuff. I wouldn't say this is a technique, but for example, I'll just show you right here. We could do a pitched up effect by using that slide note, and I'll get rid of all these notes. Now I forgot here that the slide note starts for each note, so that actually might not be effective here because it restarts per every note. Now let's see if we do it this way. If we make one long note and then tell it to slide up in a sliced fashion. I've never sliced, oh, you can't even slice a slide note. Okay, well that defeats my my little experiment that I was trying to show you here. But something you could experiment with is this multiple slide notes. Yeah, it doesn't do what I expected it to do. So in that case, if you wanted to pitch it up a quicker way, and this is one way, I'm glad I did it this way because I just remembered I didn't show you one thing about the where are we at here? Let my brain get together. About the control section is if you go to fine pitch, you can do pitch stuff here. So you could left click and drag or right click, and it will pitch it up or down. So that's another one of those Internet Money type sounds as well. Now this is more of that accurate sound for the Internet Money because this sample just fits this sound. Now this roll wasn't here before, so let's take that out. Now you're like, why'd the volume go away? Remember, it keeps the same parameters. So we need to go through these parameters and figure out why it's not sounding. Okay, so we need to troubleshoot here, make sure everything's good. This might be too low of a pitch. Maybe that's why. Or it could be too short of a note. I'm trying to figure out why these aren't sounding. Oh, they're slide notes. See, I'm glad I did that because I revealed that they're slide notes. So we got, that's why I said you have to know FL to understand how to troubleshoot sometimes. So in that case, I just double clicked the note and took off the slide feature. Remember, that's why I said when you click on any note, it copies all the parameters of that note. So when you add new notes, because I must have clicked on a slide note and tried to make new notes, and every note became a slide note. So that's why I said you have to know how to reset everything, just in the case. Okay, so that's pretty much everything you need to know about hi-hats. I mean, can't think of anything else you'll really need to know. And one last thing you could do is under the wrench tool, you can turn up your time shift. We covered this in part 1. Most people don't leave enough time gaps in their drums, so they sound super stiff. So now it just opened up a little bit of a groove. This is Metro's technique. So now the drums don't sound like computerized. So thank you for watching this entire video. If you want to continue this series, just go to busyworksbeats.com/trap. Tell your friends about it. They can join for free as well. Just go to busyworksbeats.com/trap. And I'm excited. So I'm going to give you these project files just so you can mess around with it and just maybe even save the rhythms however you want to do. So let's save this here and let's save it as hi-hats. So we're on 2 now. Call this hi-hats. All right. So thank you for watching. It's Game from busyworksbeats.com. And if you want to learn more about how to make beats, like full-on beats, we have a course called Beat Magic. You could just go to busyworksbeats.com/beatmagic. It goes over the core rhythms. It goes over the sound selection. It goes over the key music theory you need to know to make beats. Making beats is different than learning your DAW. Learning your DAW is cool about shortcuts and all this stuff, but then you have to learn how to be creative, which is the beat making portion. Now we're covering trap beats, but in Beat Magic, we cover drill, UK drill, trap, other genres that you need to know. You need to understand the difference in the rhythms, the sound selection, and all these different things. So I wanted to thank you for watching. It's Game from busyworksbeats.com.